September 3, 2019, President Donald Trump's new round of tariffs on Chinese goods is going into effect even as we speak. But the more Trump escalates his trade war, the more unpopular protectionism gets with American voters, especially Democratic ones. So all the Democratic presidential candidates are sprinting to put distance between the trade policies and Trump's America Firstism. Right. Wrong. Indeed, the leading presidential contenders, since Bernie Sanders, VT, and Elizabeth Warren, Mass, who are setting the tone for the rest of the pack, are functionally identical if not worse than Trump on this issue. And the reason is that they don't think that average Democratic voters care enough about trade to punish him for the protectionism. It seems like Trump's trade bashing has done more to bring people around to the cause of free trade in 2 years than English political economist Adam Smith's canonical defense in The Wealth of Nations did in nearly 250. Indeed, literally every time the chosen one saber rattles against China, Americans become more positively disposed toward trade. The Chicago Council survey found last year that support for trade among Americans had touched an all-time high, with 82% of respondents saying it was good for the economy, 85% saying it was good for consumers like them, and 67% saying it was good for America. These findings were pretty much confirmed by a Pew Research poll last month that found that compared to 2 years ago when only 50% Americans overall believed that free trade was good for the country, now 65% think so. Democratic voters in particular, Pew found, had jettisoned their 1990s hostility to trade completely. About 73% of those who were or leaned Democratic now agree that trade is good for the country, a 13-point jump even from 2 years ago. Likewise, a Hill-Harris poll found that 58% of Democrats believe that Trump's China negotiations would result in fewer jobs and economic opportunities. Even more to the point, in a swing state like Michigan that has historically veered Democratic but that Trump narrowly won, a statewide poll by the Detroit Regional Chamber a few weeks ago found that while voters believe tariffs on cars made in foreign countries hurt the state's automotive industry, they also overwhelmingly believe that tariffs on Chinese imports hurt Michigan farmers and that tariffs on foreign products hurt consumers like themselves. Democratic presidential contenders have concluded that all of this represents mere revulsion at Trump's style, not a serious change of heart. But Americans would have to be blind to not see the riches that trade has delivered them. The Peterson Institute for International Economics has estimated that expansion of free trade has generated $2.1 trillion for America between 1950 and 2016. That works out on average $18,000 in income for American households. Moreover, these gains have gone disproportionately to working-class households that shop at Walmart stacked with foreign goods. Indeed, if an average American hasn't felt a bigger pinch by the soaring prices of indigenously generated health care, education, and other services, it is because of the plummeting price of foreign goods. But last year, for the first time in a decade, the prices of furniture, clothes, and electronics stopped falling. And if Trump does not back off his trade war with China, only divine intervention would stop him from spiking. Nor are consumers the only ones getting hurt. Producers, the intended beneficiaries of Trump's trade war, are too. China's retaliatory tariffs on American soybeans, wheat, and pork are decimating farmers. The National Farmers Union has issued a scathing condemnation of Trump's trade war. Instead of looking to solve existing problems in our agricultural sector, this administration has just created new ones, its statement said. Between burning bridges with all of our biggest trading partners and undermining our domestic biofuels industry, President Trump is making things worse, not better. Meanwhile, given that over 60% of imported goods are used in production, increased tariffs means increased production costs for American manufacturers. In all this, Democrats should be mounting a vigorous case against Trump's trade policies, pointing out that beggaring your partner trade wars aren't easy to win, they are self-injurious. But that is not what they are doing. They are harumphing against Trump's Twitter diplomacy and his hyper-belligerent style. But they are otherwise unwilling to stick up for trade or even defend the era of trade liberalization that President Bill Clinton ushered in with NAFTA and the normalization of trade ties with China. Indeed, among the top 10 Democrats who will be on the debate stage next week, with the exception of former Texas Rep. Beto O'Rourke, who represents the NAFTA-dependent border town of El Paso and is polling at 2%, not a single one of them is willing to defend the treaty. Former President Joe Biden, who voted for NAFTA when he was a senator, has gone mum. He slams Trump's irresponsible tariff war, but then undercuts his own criticism by declaring, "We do need to get tough with China, Sen." Kamala Harris Caliph tosses offhand comments about Trump's tariffs being a trade tax, but then quickly abandons the subject. South Bend, Indiana, Mayor Pete Buttigieg has lambasted Trump's yammering about America's export imbalance with China as a red herring, but otherwise is totally opaque about his plans. But there is no ambiguity with Sanders and Warren. Sanders has always been an unrepentant protectionist. If he could have his druthers, he would ban trade with any country poorer than America on the Marxist theory that competition with lower-wage workers leads to the immiseration of the American working class. Warren is even more ideologically ambitious. Like Trump, she couches her plans under the rubric of fair trade. But for Trump, at least in theory if not practice, that means forcing other countries to slash the trade barriers and moving toward a no-tariff world where no one has an artificial advantage over America. Warren, however, wants to use America's economic might to forcibly enlist countries in a leftist crusade. As The Nation's Todd Tucker approvingly notes, Warren's trade plan is as much a theory of power as it is a set of ideas. She has drawn up a tall list of preconditions that countries must meet to qualify to trade with America. These cover almost everything on the leftist wish list, including protecting religious freedom and human rights, signing the Paris Accords, fighting public corruption, combating sex trafficking, stopping tax evasion, and enforcing labor rights. She'd renegotiate every existing trade deal in accordance with her perfection criteria. But given that no country on the planet, not even America, currently lives up to her lofty standards, basically global trade would come to a grinding halt under her. This is totally cuckoo and makes Trump look like a veritable trade dove. Even a liberal professor like Daniel Drezner, a columnist for The Washington Post, admits Elizabeth Warren's trade policy is even more protectionist and unilateralist than Donald Trump's. Yet, he says, if she's the Democratic nominee, he'd hold his nose and vote for her. And that, in a nutshell, is why Sanders and Warren have no qualms about indulging their extremist anti-trade fantasies. They believe that moderate liberals are so desperate to get rid of Trump that they will vote for any Democrat. In addition, an extremist strategy will energize the progressive and labor base. A majority of voters in a swing state like Michigan might be put off by the protectionism. However, labor unions that Trump managed to successfully woo away with his trade bashing might return to the Democratic fold if they double down on his mantle. Time will tell if this strategy will work. But one thing is for certain, if Sanders or Warren win, they will hammer the final nail in the Trump-made coffin of free trade, no matter how much ordinary Americans want the cause to live on. Let's block ads. Why?